Sports Talk Chicago. Here with Jon Zaghloul, and we are back and ready for today's special guest. He's an NFL on CBS broadcaster and the studio host of March Madness coverage. Please welcome Greg Gumbel to the program. Greg, it's great to have you on. How are you?
I'm glad to be back, John. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for being here. What was your reaction to the Justin Fields pick for the Bears?
I can't say that I was surprised. I think that probably Bears fans are grateful that they that their team was aggressive enough to go out and realize what they needed to do. And that's no reflection on Andy Dalton, but Andy Dalton has been around for a few years. He certainly is not your guy for the future because you need to plan further than that. And in fact, Andy Dalton would be a good guy for Justin Fields to study under for a season. But I thought it was a good move by the Bears. I think that a lot of people they kind of thought it would happen. They just didn't know quite how the Bears would go about getting it done, or if they would get it done. But kudos to them. They did what they had to do.
Did they give up too much in moving up?
You never know that. You never know that until it happens. You know, you and I probably talked about this before. These people who go on the air and make predictions, it's all so stupid because you never it really is. Well, this team is going to win this division and this team is going to flop, and you never know that. Well, these guys are really strong. You never know how the loss of certain players is going to affect a team or during the offseason. You never know how the new players coming in, how those acquisitions are going to fit in with what you already have. You may make these draft picks, and you can reel off a bunch of draft picks who have flopped over the years. And so there's no guarantee that they're going to live up to the hype. I have always said during the NFL season that you can't really get a read on a team and how it is in the new season until you're at least 6 weeks in, 6 or 7 games into the season, because only then can you tell whether this kid coming out of college, boy, he was really NFL ready, or he was just a great college football player, and that's where it ends. You know, so it's there are so many ifs, ands, and buts. But for anyone to come out and say, well, these are the two teams that are going to meet in the Super Bowl, please, give me one team, give me one guy that said Tampa Bay was going to be in the Super Bowl, let alone win the whole thing. I think that the most optimistic belief for Tampa Bay last year was that with the addition of Tom Brady and a good defense already in place, that they would make the playoffs. But I don't think anybody had predicted that they would go as far as they did.
How surprising was that for you to see them go that far?
Well, I'm not sure that my opinion counts for anything because 2 seasons ago, Bruce Arians was my broadcast partner.
Right.
Yeah, he was in the booth with me, so I had nothing but good wishes for Bruce. And I've always thought he's a hell of a coach. So I didn't know if I really felt that way or if I'm just feeling that way because I like Bruce. But the fact of the matter is that I do think they exceeded everyone's expectations, except probably Bruce's. But I think he's shown in a couple of different areas now that he's a really good coach, and that's good for him. And I don't think I need to add to the applause for Tom Brady. I think he gets enough of that.
Have you communicated with Bruce after they won the
Oh,
Super Bowl?
oh my God! I talked to him at midnight that night.
Really? What did he say? What was
Sure.
that conversation like?
I said, you really need to raise a glass to yourself. And he goes, working on it. because we did that every now and then when we worked together. We'd arrive on Friday and we'd do some player interviews and we'd have dinner together, our whole crew. And he's just a delightful person. And he would look at various teams and, he let me know that there were teams that were contacting him during the season that work together, because you're never really sure that someone is done when they say they are, because sometimes that old nagging feeling will come back and grab you and won't let you get away. And it's kind of like an itch that still needs to be scratched. But sure, he and I have been in touch ever since he left. I called him a deserter. I told him, yeah, go ahead. Just because they pay you more money than we could afford to pay you. but I'm so happy for him, and he's a good guy. Players tell me he's great to play for, but he's a no nonsense guy too. And sometimes you don't find both of those qualities in the same coach.
What was he like as a broadcaster with you?
I think he could have been okay if he had given it, or if he had given it more of a shot than one season. The tough thing about someone coming in who has never done it before is that they've never done it before. And it's one of those things that I'm very happy to say. I've seen people come into the business and they find out that it isn't as easy as we often make it sound. That sometimes they find, oh, this is not a snap, and this is not something that I can just do off the top of my head. I need to do a little homework and be a little bit knowledgeable in the things that I'm talking about. Now, I think with Bruce's case, and then I teased Trent Green because I said, here's the thing that Trent liked. I told Trent, you have somebody in the booth now who speaks your language. And it's true. They would start talking about things. Well, when you're playing quarters on the defense, you got this, and you got the over under. And I'm like, what are you people talking about? But they understood each other perfectly. They were great together. And so I think that Bruce got a little bit into the habit of talking to Trent when he should be talking to the audience. And sometimes he would get a little bit too technical. And he wouldn't explain things the way they had to be. John Madden's great gift was making a complicated game simple. He would break things down so that the audience and the average fan would understand what was going on the field. And Bruce, I think, eventually would have gotten there, but you don't get that done in 1 or 2 months or the first season, sometimes not even the first or second season. His delivery was a little bit muted, and as I said, he didn't realize he needed to be talking to the audience and not necessarily to Trent Green in the booth. But I thought that he was a little rough around the edges at times. We had our very first game. We were in Cleveland, and it was Cleveland against Pittsburgh. And Bruce referred to a lot of guys by their first names because he's been on a first name basis with them for years and years and years. And the Steelers, there was an incomplete pass, and we were talking about it, and Bruce said, well, he had Antonio wide ass open at the 5-yard line. And, during the commercial, we say, we got a kick out of that. And Trent and I got a big kick out.
Greg Gumbel here on Sports Talk Chicago. Greg, what excites you about Justin Fields and the Bears right now?
Well, I think for the Bears, and for a lot of people, it's not just Justin Fields. It's any team that picks up a youngster coming out of college, the Jets with Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. You're excited to see if the potential that you have witnessed on film and in-game action transfers to the National Football League. The talent is there, but that's never a guarantee that someone's going to make it. And John, as well as I do, the reverse is always true. Tom Brady was a 6th round draft choice. Come on. That is in retrospect crazy, but it's a fact. So, and you always know, remember Ryan Leaf? Ryan Leaf was the number 2 draft pick overall. He had a strong arm, but as far as accuracy, or what was his name? LaMarcus, the Raiders picked Jamarcus Russell. Jamarcus Russell could stand in front of a barn 25 yards away and still not hit the barn. I went into town. I met into town one day, and I was looking at the statistics prior to a game with him, and his completion percentage was below 55%. What are you, nuts? How are you gonna win football games completing less than 55%? Even guys who are losing football games are averaging 65% completion. So there's never a guarantee. But what I think that fans need to be excited about is that he has the potential and he has the promise to do wonderful things on the football field. And I think it's going to be a thrill for fans. And there's going to be some losses and mistakes along the way. And, shame on you if that takes you by surprise and you get disgruntled by that, because it happens with everyone. But people are going to watch, and I think they're going to be pleased by his abilities. And hopefully for for the Chicago area, they'll see an improvement in their team and promise for the future.
What's your number one concern about the Bears right now?
Oh, I don't know. I like their coach. I've liked their team anytime I've had a chance to do them in the last couple of years. I think the number one concern is to continue to build on past. Here's the thing too. They had some rough ups and downs with Mitchell Trubisky, and it stalled the progress of the team because when you make a draft pick, and they went out of their way to get Mitchell Trubisky. When you get a draft pick that high, you want it to work like the world is dependent on it, and it doesn't always happen that way. And yet, you don't want to bail on a guy too soon, but you don't want to overhype it anyway. And I think they went as far as they could. And that means continuing to build on the things that you've accomplished in the last couple of seasons. And from the Bears' point of view, it probably isn't. A lot of the fans say, "Well, it hasn't been that great." But I think that the progress that they've made there is significant. And the problem they have now is how to work Justin Fields into the mix without taking a step backwards. And he has to learn, the Bears have to learn with him, but also they're going to have Andy Dalton leading the way for a little while, and they're trying to continue to build on a record and teach this youngster at the same time.
Did you like that signing?
Well, you had to do something, because at that point they didn't know what they were going to do in the draft. They knew what they needed. They didn't know whether or not they were going to get what they needed. And a guy like Andy Dalton, and I don't mean this to denigrate Andy Dalton at all. Andy Dalton is a fine quarterback. He has been a fine quarterback in the league for a long, long time. He just happened to have the misfortune to play with the dreadful Cincinnati Bengals. And the fact that he was out there and available, I don't think that the Bears could afford to wait to see what was going to happen with the draft. I think Andy Dalton would have been gone to someone else by the time the draft came around. And so I think they made the decision that they had to make. And I don't think it's a bad decision at all.
Greg Gumbel here on Sports Talk Chicago. Greg, what's wrong with baseball right now?
You mean other than doubleheader games going only 7 innings, or extra innings starting with a man on second base? I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's just stupid. Absolutely stupid. It's not the same game that I grew up knowing and loving. The very fact that they have these the dumbest thing is the warnings to both benches whenever there are pitches that are too close to the hitter. Another thing is, the catcher is really not allowed to block home plate. Why would that be unfair? There's no more trying to take out the shortstop at second base to avoid it. To eliminate a double play. All of that is stuff that people, even playing the game, people who have been injured in those situations have grown up knowing and understanding. The players understand it, but of all of the things that I have heard, I've heard that they're doing the whole thing about shortening the game because baseball games are running too long. Who's complaining about baseball games running too long? I've never heard that complaint. Not ever. Anybody who loves the game of baseball, you sit there and you watch the game, whether it's in the stands or at home on TV, and you love the game. The only level of being upset that I had was when the game was over. I love baseball to the point where, play it all day. I don't care. 15, 16 innings, it's a great day. But no, they've gone way overboard in trying to correct something that really didn't need correcting. And that's in various areas. It's not just this area or that area. The whole thing about, when can you take a pitcher out? When can you put it back in? I hate the shift. I can't stand the shift. Put 2 ball players on one side of second base and 2 on the other, and leave them there. And everybody plays by the same rules. And now you got me started, John, because now I'm all upset about the whole thing.
Do you watch games anymore?
Absolutely.
Even with all this going on, you still do?
Sure. Yeah. Well, what else would I have to complain about?
Let me ask you this. How concerning is the strikeout rate to you?
Oh, it's horrible. It's horrible because there are people who don't play and don't teach the game of baseball anymore. To me, the strikeout thing in baseball is the very same as the 3-point thing in the NBA. It is out of control and it's ruining the game. Well, gosh, was it 3 years ago, 4 years ago? There was a New York Mets game I was watching, and it cried out for a sacrifice bunt. And after the game, and he didn't, the guy struck out. And after the game, they asked the manager, why didn't you have him bunt? He says, well, because he's never laid down a bunt in Major League Ball, and so I didn't think he could do it. That is criminal. Little leaguers learn how to bunt. Pony leaguers, high school baseball, they all know how to bunt. This guy couldn't lay down a and shot is the idea is strikeouts. And the strikeout is the result of everybody in the lineup, top to bottom, trying to hit a home run. You can tell by the bad pitches that they swing at. You can tell by the mighty swing that's just out of control. It's either a hit or miss, and there are way too many strikeouts in Major League Baseball these days. And look, you ever hear an announcer say, "Oh, he was caught looking"? He wasn't caught looking. He was caught guessing, because there's no reason to take a fastball for strike three, waist high down the middle of the, and he guessed wrong. There are so many aspects to the game that are beautiful, and today's baseball takes a lot of that out of it, and that bothers me.
Should they move the mound back, or is that even necessary? Because this seems like a hitter problem, not a pitching problem.
Well, I think it is a hitter problem, and what they're doing is they're trying to get more. It was the same reason they did the DH, which I think is hilarious, because you get a DH and you go, well, how did this DH do last night? Oh, he went 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts. Well, what the hell kind of a designated hitter is that? No, I don't think that lowering the mound is the answer. I think that what'll happen is you will have a lot more people hitting home runs than you do now, because maybe a mile or two off the fastball is all some guys need. A lot of guys can't catch up to a 98 mile an hour fastball, but they can catch up to one that's 95, and on down the line. I think it's one of those things that there is a trend in sports in general for more offense, because that is the ticket that they feel will sell their sport. I understand it to a degree, because I feel that way about soccer. I'm never, ever ashamed or embarrassed to say that I don't like the game of soccer. It's not that they're not terrific athletes. I know that they are. But the fact is that if you have a soccer game that ended 2-1, if you had played the game without goalies, it would have been 3-2. That is how infrequently you get, and the ball rolls out of bounds and the clock still goes. And I don't care if they add time at the end of the 90 minutes. I just think it's a weird sport. And the people are jumping around and up and down in the stands, no matter what's happening on the field. So suffice to say, I'm not a big soccer fan, but the whole emphasis in all sports, look, they eliminated the 2-line pass, ability of more breakaways on the goalie. In football, you know what they've done. You cannot touch the quarterback, and you cannot touch a wide receiver, because basically that hinders the offensive thrust. In baseball, I think that's another step. One of the things that has hurt the offensive side of baseball are these, I don't want to call them names, but these managers who will change pitchers at the drop of a hat. There was a story when Tom Seaver was pitching for the New York Mets, and he was into the 8th inning, and the bases were loaded in a tight game, and Yogi Berra, the manager, comes out of the dugout. And the story is, Yogi walks up onto the mound, and Tom Seaver looks at him and he said, "Get your butt back into the dugout, Yogi." And Yogi went, "Okay." And he turned around and he left the pitcher's mound. There was a time you would never do that to a Bob Gibson. You would never do that to Bob Feller or Sandy Koufax. But because a manager thinks that his that his pitcher might be getting weak, he comes in and all of a sudden here's a fresh pitcher in a crucial situation. Like the Yankees bring in Aroldis Chapman. He came in the other night. I watched the game that they were playing. I think it was against Detroit. He comes in and his first 3 pitches are above 100 miles an hour. And you go, well, gee, I'm glad we got through the rest of the order in order to get to that. Strange situation, and I think that they believe that it sells the sport more. I don't. I don't think that in any sport you give enough credit to the defense, and you should.
Is Rob Manfred the worst commissioner in sports, Greg?
Yeah, he might be. He might be. I think that I don't like some of the things that they do in the National Hockey League. I think hockey is a terrific sport. This coming from a person who has never been on a pair of ice skates in his life. I cannot attempt to ice skate. However, I can watch a hockey game between the 2 worst teams in the league on television because I love the sport. I love the anticipation. I love the grit that they have and the tenacity that they go after their sport. You know, any sport that wears you out after you've only been on the ice for 2 minutes, you know, is going to be taxing. But yeah, I don't like what Manfred has done, or what he is allowing to happen in Major League Baseball. At this point, it may be beyond his control now, and he probably can't do very much with it.